I'm chatting with my dear friend Enrico Stinchelli. Greetings, everyone. It is now 2 o'clock here in New York, 8 o'clock in Rome and Berlin, and all over the world. People are tuning in to watch Fred Plotkin on Fridays. I am thrilled to have Enrico Stinchelli here. I was saying to him that I could take a whole hour just introducing him and telling people what he does, but I'll do it in a couple of minutes, and then I want you listeners to get to know him. Enrico Stinchelli, a lot of people have said that I am the American Enrico Stinchelli, and they've occasionally said that he is the Italian Fred Plotkin. There was a man in Vienna named Marcel Pravi at the Vienna State Opera. And what I can only say is that what we have in common, I would never compare myself to Marcelo Enrico, is our incredible passion for opera, a really good memory. We have a memory for everything. We forget nothing, ever. And we love sharing and spreading opera, our passion for opera, and we're probably pretty good at it. Enrico has a wonderful program. How long have you had La Barcaccia?
Since 1988.
1988. So I've been listening. I lived in America and I moved back to Italy in 1988. So I've been listening since 1988 to this magnificent program on the Rai. It's been on radio. It's also been on television occasionally as Prima della Prima. And no country has a better program for promoting the love of opera. I know many people who listen to Enrico all over Italy, even if they don't know opera, because they love listening to Enrico. He has what the Italians call la voce amica, in other words, a voice that you want to hear. So that's a very brief introduction. Let me say benvenuto, welcome, Enrico.
Thank you very much. I'm very proud to be here with you. And I must beg your pardon for my Italo-English. So please.
We love Italo-English. English with an Italian accent, there's nothing better. So Sophia Loren did pretty well. Gina Lollobrigida did pretty well. No problem. No problem whatsoever.
Thank you very much for your help.
So I'm going to start with a particular question for you that I've been thinking about a lot. You are from Rome.
Yeah.
Is that correct? You were born and you grew up in Rome.
I'm Roman and proud to be Roman. You see,
okay.
We say sono di Roma. That means not complete Italian. Rome is Rome, then Italy.
That's like New York, Paris. There are cities like that that just are international and unique in the world, but also a part of their country.
Yeah.
So my question for you is, Enrico, when people talk about opera in Italy, they will mention Milano above all for La Scala. If they know the history of opera, they will know that it was born in Florence and grew in Venice. It had a wonderful century and a half in Naples. There are theaters that are beloved theaters in Trieste, in Torino, in Palermo, Catania, throughout the country. But when I ask people about opera and Rome, they say, well, there's Tosca, and there are the elephants at the Terme di Caracalla. That's all they know about Rome. And actually, as you know, there have not been elephants at the Terme di Caracalla in 40 years. So,
oh, yes.
Tell me about opera and Rome, the historic relationship, and why we don't think of opera for Rome.
You know, the problem is that Rome is like a big, big house with many, many, many floors. It's one of there are not so many cities in the world with such an incredible history. We say in Roman dialect, we say, morto un papa se ne fa un altro. That means after one pope, there is always another one. So the Roman character is typical, is a little bit scenic, we can say that, is is not so important for a Roman, the opera house. Is one of the many buildings that we have there. That's a pity because I love opera as my life. So for me, it's incredible that in the capital of Italy, the Roman theater is not so well known, not so beloved. It's normal for a Roman to have also an opera house. You know, it's typical of the Roman character. And for the politicians, I think that the Rome Opera House is not so important like Scala di Milano. Scala is the first one. Then Rome, for money, okay. For the FUS, that is the money found of the state for support.
14.
Yes.
14 opera houses, yeah.
Yes. And the Rome Opera House has a lot of money from the government, but it's not so important. It's not so mythical. La Scala is the first one. La Scala is the theater, the Italian theater. Rome Opera House is the theater of the capital. It's something different, quite different.
What do you think the fact of the presence of Cinecittà, the Italian film industry, how does that affect or not affect opera? To me, cinema is an outgrowth of opera in terms of storytelling, music, spectacle. And Cinecittà in Rome is a magnificent place that's produced real art, not just movies, but real art for many decades.
You know that now Cinecittà is a museum.
Yeah.
It's not more, has no more the activity of Fellini time, for example.
Yes.
Cinecittà is a dream, is something incredible. I believe that the night, if you walk there, you can hear the ghosts of the great actors of the Cleopatra film, Cecil B. DeMille, and all the great directors. And there is now a museum, is something like a the big dream of the Renaissance after the war. The Second World War, the boom, the economical boom of Rome has in Cinecittà his heart, his real, the most important center for producing dreams and wonderful arts, film. Yes, you are right. It's not only cinema. It's not only something it's not only entertainment. It's art. The real art of Cinecittà, I think, is much more important as the Italian opera house for Rome.
Yes.
I'm sure.
And then there is La Rai, the national broadcasting company, which is originally radio and then television. And well before there was satellite Sky networks and international programming, I'm old enough, or I was young enough, when I moved to Italy, that I had a bianco e nero, a black and white television set, and I didn't miss much because not all programming was in color. The very first program on television on the Rai was in 1954. Yeah. And there was just one channel, Canale Uno, there was just La Rai. Yeah. And it was from Rome. And I think one of the most important contributions of the Rai, number one, is preserving and presenting Italian culture for many, many years. But second, in my view, it changed the Italian language, because before that in school, Italian language was Fiorentino, Florentine, it was traditional, it was Latin-based. Yeah. But by the 1970s or early 80s, the Italian language was sort of the Roman language and the Roman sense of humor. And television and radio, but especially television, had a means of unification of Italy, as we say,
Yeah,
that Verdi could not do, and Pellegrino Artusi, the great author of food recipes, and Alessandro Manzoni, the great author of the 19th century, Promessi Sposi. These were men who created things that united Italy in one way. But to me, it's really even more than cinema. It is the Rai that created a national conversation.
sure. I agree with you because all what you said was the real unity of Italy. Italy was, you know, a country where the half of people after the war could not speak Italian as well as a normal citizen. Many dialects from northern part of Italy to southern part of Italy, you cannot understand really, you cannot imagine two Italians speaking together with their own dialects, because we have many dialects even after 2 kilometers from your town. So the Italian television, the Italian Broadcasting Corporation was sure like a school, a big school for all the Italians. I agree with you. It's a correct analysis.
Do you think also that the Italian sense of humor changed with television? Because there was something called varietà. Varietà is not quite vaudeville. It was an art form that was done primarily in Naples and Rome that was funny entertainment. Throughout the country you would have it, but it was especially funny in Naples with Totò, with Anna Magnani in Rome.
I have Totò here, you see, my
Totò is one of my heroes.
Book, Totò.
Did you write that book?
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you about your book soon, but Totò is one of my heroes.
Yeah, and, like me.
And kind of like Enrico Stinchelli is not known enough outside of Italy. But Totò to me is the master in terms of what Italians call giochi di parole, which are not puns, but it's the way you use the language to say two things.
Yeah.
And Enrico, you in Italian do that incredibly well.
Yeah.
And part of the pleasure and why so many people love listening to you is that they listen to how you express humor and opinions in very subtle ways, in un doppio senso italiano, a double sense.
There is a typical phrase in Latin, a very old motto, ridendo castigat mores. That means laughing and joking, you can really say the truth.
Yeah.
And many also the bad things you can see you can tell them very well to the people. Laughing and joking is the secret.
So that's Rigoletto.
Yeah. Rigoletto. Yes. Yeah. The other one, you see, Totò and Rigoletto are here together.
My heroes.
I was studying some very important details of Rigoletto, because Rigoletto now, there was a big speaking about this modern Rigoletto in Rome. Perhaps you know something about.
I do, yeah. But tell us about it.
Yeah, a special direction, but many conductors, they didn't know what Verdi wrote in his score. There are many musical details that it is very important to study today, understand how must be done the music of Verdi, because many are speaking about Rigoletto without knowing what Verdi wrote. So I have here Rigoletto because I was studying the score of Rigoletto, and this, for example, Corona points. There are some little notes with the Corona sign. That means cadenza or high notes to do. But many conductors think, okay, no, 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 the high notes are not important. And they put away the high notes in Rigoletto. It's not the correct way to do the bel canto. We can also speak then, if you want, about the bel canto style. It's very important for the listeners.
We will, but I want to ask you, and
Yeah,
I'm going to mention later too that you direct opera, but I want to talk to you
yeah,
now about something that I know you do that I also do. This is why we're not specifically critics, but we are, because I try not to write reviews or criticize, but to advance opera, to share opera, divulgare l'opera lirica, as we would say in Italian.
yeah.
And one of the things that you and I both do a fair amount of is coaching opera singers in their roles, not just musically, but getting into the text, looking at what the music tells us about the character in a moment.
Yeah.
And as it happens, we picked up Rigoletto. I face a challenge all the time on a particular aria, La Donna è mobile, in that when most tenors go to their coach, if they don't really speak Italian or don't pay attention, they say the line in the following way: La donna è mobile, qual più mal vento, not qual piume al vento. In other words, like a woman is fickle like feather in the wind. But when they say it qual più mal vento, it's like saying a woman is fickle more like bad wind.
Yeah.
And we know what bad wind is.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
malaria. And
you know, there are
so,
many of these problems.
yeah,
It's not easy to study an Italian opera text because, you know, it's an old Italian. So perhaps there are many, many, many words that nobody uses today. So I can imagine a foreigner studying Rigoletto, La Donna Mobile. Really is very important to have an Italian coach near and a very expert about Italian dialects and the old Italian, because
yes,
the libretto is very old. It's very difficult even for an Italian. In Rigoletto, there is a phrase. Rigoletto is near his house for this terrible joke of the courtesans, and he's waiting. The end of this joke is the rape of his daughter, but he doesn't know that. So he's like totally blind because he has a towel on his eyes, and he says, "Riedo perché." And many singers, even Italian singers, thought about this word, and they're reading rido, not riedo. Riedo is a very old way to say I'm coming back.
yes.
Rido is laughing. So there is a very funny recording of Rigoletto with the baritone Benito Di Bella. He made that. Rido perché? It's wrong. He was laughing before. Riedo. He must not laugh. You can see what can happen. It's very difficult to study text and music. So that opera is a very, very difficult job. It's not for all.
No, I have another one for you that I encounter all the time because everybody does La Traviata. I think because stage directors and coaches tend to focus on the main characters, so Violetta, Alfredo, Germont, maybe Anina, maybe Flora, some of the very small roles are not really paid attention to, and they count on the singer to learn his or her words and music and come in and do it. And I was working with a young opera company, And the young man, a very nice young man who was playing the doctor, Dr. Granville, who comes in the last act, says the words. The words are to Violetta as he's holding her limp hand and she's dying. He says, "Addio a più tardi." But he just said it in a flat way. Yeah. And in my view, addio means farewell, not ciao, arrivederci.
Farewell.
Addio, farewell. This is it.
Ever.
And then he is supposed to catch himself and say, "Addio, a più tardi." In other words, to correct him so he's not telling Violetta that she's dead, yes, or she's about to be dead, yes, because he says to her, "I want you to have courage. You will get better soon." And then when he leaves, she says to
hope.
Yeah. And when he leaves, Violetta says to Anina, "Doctors are such good liars." Yeah. But because Violetta understands, but these lines and Verdi's music tell us all the psychology and the emotion underneath words, which are addio a più tardi. But when these young men say it, addio a più tardi, no.
If you're in a hope, you are a doctor, not a priest, you know.
So there's so much I want to ask you, but actually one more thing. Growing up in Rome, if there was not as much opera as there might have been in other cities, how were you exposed to opera?
I think that you mean the difference between the situation in Rome and the other theaters, and how.
Well, did your parents love opera? Did your parents love opera, and did they introduce you to it? Or?
Yes, because both are journalists, and so they have a big culture, general culture. My father did a lot of interviews with many important singers like Beniamino Gigli or Mario del Monaco or Giacomo Laurivolpi. Mm-hmm. And once I came back after a football match, I was very, very young. I was 15, 16, I came back in my house, and there was a television program with Mario del Monaco as guest. And my father told me, "You see, Mario del Monaco, I interviewed him. I was not interested about Mario del Monaco." So I said, okay. But during this program, Mario del Monaco self spoke about Giacomo Laurivolpi. Mm-hmm. And said to the journalist that Giacomo Laurivolpi, this famous tenor, was the king of high C. I don't know why, but this word made me very curious about what is high C. Mm-hmm. And my father told me this story. He said, Giacomo Laurivolpi, with this high C in Trovatore of Verdi, remained out from the curtain with his sword, and with this very long note, the orchestra stopped, and Laurivolpi was with his high note during the enthusiasm of the public. So this story was for me like a magic tale. I was so astonished about that. I went immediately to the shop, musical shop, to buy the whole opera Trovatore, and looking this piece, Di quella pira, with the high C. I can say that this high C was the beginning of my incredible passion for the opera and the changing of my life. One note is incredible.
Verdi is my hero as a man. He's one of my 2 or 3 favorite composers. I study Verdi endlessly. And my feeling about Verdi and about many of these artists, but especially Verdi, is he knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
And if he did something that to me doesn't make sense, it's not his fault, it's my fault. And I need to understand why Verdi did what he did. And I say that as a pretext to say that Il Trovatore has magnificent music, but I don't understand his attraction to the story. That's number one.
The plot.
Number two, it is really the only opera by Verdi that he did without a contract. He did it because he was inspired by the music, by the story. And as you know, it premiered in Rome in 1852. There were not many Verdi operas that premiered in Rome. Rome at that time was not the capital of Italy. Italy was not a nation.
Yeah.
And Verdi was rather anti-clerical against the church. And to me, part of my opinion of why Rome is less of an opera city is because of the Vatican, and because it had religious music and lots of magnificent, the Accademia di Santa Cecilia, and lots of magnificent musical organizations. And Mozart studied and worked in Rome, and all kinds of people did. But for opera, I think the stories were too dramatic, too controversial, too political. And it was easier for Verdi and a lot of the other political Italian composers, such as Rossini, to avoid Rome completely.
Completely.
And I think that's why. But what do you think Verdi saw in the story of Il Trovatore that attracted him?
Verdi was the king of the main characters. George Bernard Shaw said that to understand a normal operatic plot, you must consider that the soprano, the woman, is in love with the tenor, but the baritone doesn't like it. That is very simple to understand 500 or 1,000 operas. That is the simple plot of the Trovatore. But in Trovatore, the first version had Azucena as main title.
The mother.
The mother, the gypsy. Giuseppe Verdi loved so much this strong female character of Azucena, this sorceress, gypsy, mother of two sons, is an incredible character, is very, very strong. Together with Azucena, you find two brothers that they don't know that one is the brother of the other one. The tenor is the brother of the baritone, but they fight all the time for 4 acts. They are fighting all the time. And only in the last 30 seconds, the Count of Luna knows that he's brother of Manrico. That is incredible. I mean, that is a masterpiece. It's extraordinary that you wait 4 acts of the opera and only in the last 30 seconds, you have this horror with the real plot. It's like, you know, a book of Agatha Christie, or you have the coup de théâtre at the end.
Yes.
And in the middle of this plot, you have a wonderful love story between Leonora, the very young Leonora. She's a very young. A mistake is to do Leonora old. Leonora is a young girl, 16. Many times we see soprano, they seems to be 70. It's not possible for Leonora. It's a story of young people. Yeah. And Verdi utilized a very complicated text with an old Italian inside. Di quella pira l'orrendo fuoco, tutte le fibre. Tutte le fibre means all my body. Yes. No one today says tutte le mie fibre. Nobody use today this word. But the music of Verdi explains that very, very well. So that as director, because I have my activity as director, I am against the stupid way to do a modern interpretation. For me, a correct interpretation is to utilize a tradition, but with the technology, with lights, with effects, with video effects. You can use what you want. But if you put Verdi in a subway or in a toilet or, or in a garage with many cars, okay, we saw that since 40 years. Is not the right way for me.
No.
Verdi is old and modern together. You must respect also some of the best of the tradition way, for me.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to get more into Trovatore. I think we could do hours just on Trovatore.
Sure.
But I want to mention one thing. I, as you know, teach at New York University in the Casa Italiana Zerilli Marimo, one of the great centers of Italian culture in America. And I lead a course called Adventures in Italian Opera. And one day I'd like you to be there. And in more recent years, we do it on video. But early on, we just did it audio. In other words, just sound. And I had Dolores Zajic on, the wonderful mezzo, who was a great Leonora. She was supposed to come back in May because I wanted her on video, but unfortunately the pandemic ended that. And I asked her to explain Il Trovatore, and I've never heard, you gave a very, very good, clear point of view from the male side, and she gave a fascinating interpretation from the female side. That yes, the opera really might be about Azucena, but for her, it was about what we call post-traumatic stress syndrome. In other words, when you've gone through terrible shocks and horrors, living with the nightmares and the echoes and the visions that you see, and that all of these visions that Azucena sees are reliving the horrors, the death of a baby in a fire and a mother being killed and all of that. And it made sense to me for the first time, because I think it's easy to say that Il Trovatore can seem ridiculous. And that gets back to your point about Verdi being modern and historical. I think that a great divide between the English-speaking world and the Italian-speaking world is that in the English-speaking world, which is to say America, Britain, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, other places, most people who like opera prefer Puccini.
Yeah.
Whereas in the Italian-speaking world, Verdi is number one. This is not to say that Puccini is not good, but Verdi is clearly number one. And years ago, I was doing an article in 2008 when Puccini would have turned 150 for Opera News here in the United States, about why Puccini is more popular here and Verdi there. And I asked a friend of mine in Calabria, and he said because Verdi was the composer when Italy became Italy. In other words, Verdi was the national figure, one of them with Garibaldi and Mazzini and others, who led the unification of Italy. And you and I remember the lira before the euro, and on the 1,000 lira note, which is about $1, there was Giuseppe Verdi on the front, and there was La Scala on the back. And the 5,000 note was Bellini on the front and Catania on the back. And so Italy put
on... in the euro, we must put the face of Frau Merkel.
Okay.
Instead Verdi.
No, but I mean, she loves opera.
I'm joking.
I'm not going to knock Angela Merkel because she loves opera and she supports opera in her country. Sure. And I've seen her in Bayreuth a lot. Yes. But anyway, I think that Verdi, the libretti, except for La Traviata, the libretti and Verdi have an older style of speech. And part of the reason was that Verdi created characters and stories from his past. In other words, Rigoletto in the 15th or 16th century, and Attila, and all of these, Nabucco, all of these old stories that were metaphors for what was happening in contemporary Italy. Even Otello and Falstaff and Aida, the later operas, were about history and personalities. Only La Traviata was contemporary.
Yeah.
So I find that people who like Puccini like La Traviata. Whereas with Puccini, Puccini often had two librettists and he would make them fight one another. Puccini was an excellent editor. And his libretti are very modern, very beautifully spoken, very plain. La Boheme is really the language of young people.
Yes.
And I think that the only opera by Puccini that really appeals to Verdians is Tosca.
Yes.
Because Tosca has that drama in the bones that Verdi has. Puccini tended to prefer single characters, mostly women. So Suor Angelica, Minnie, Cho San, that appealed to nations and ideas such as the English-speaking world that are about the individual.
Yeah.
Whereas Verdi is about the collective, about the society, about the interaction and human relations and public responsibility versus private passion and so on. I don't want to talk too much, but I believe that where Verdi and Puccini are different and where Italians are different from non-Italians is our understanding of and the way we present Verdi.
If you consider that Verdi is still bel canto, Puccini is the beginning of the pop music. Puccini's pop, Verdi is bel canto. You know, I would speak about Italian style and school, the great school of bel canto. Bel canto means singing well, but above all, respecting some precise roles, technique, and stylistic. Bel canto demands a correct use of the voice on at least 2 octaves of extension. That is very important. With the medium of the voice, one sings on. With the high notes, one resolves. That is the motto of the old masters. For example, Cotogni, the master of Giacomo Laurivolpi. So you need high notes, but the medium of the voice is very important. So Laurivolpi was a great tenor also because he was one of the very few tenors who used the brain as well as the voice. That is important too. Bel canto also means knowing how to tie the phrases, knowing how to sing legato, and pianissimo at all heights, knowing how to use colors in the voice. Many singers have a beautiful voice, but they scream. They sing loud or very loud all the time. Also, the fault of many conductors who bring the execution towards unacceptable sonorities. That is another great problem today. At one time, the theaters at the time of Verdi had the orchestra moved forward toward the center of the hall because the stage was not rearranged as it is today. In this way, people sang without pushing in a soft and polite way. Here is bel canto, singing polite, not pushing the voice. That is Verdi. With Puccini, you have big orchestras, big sonorities, grow up the new style of conductors, for example, Toscanini. I know that you are very fond of Toscanini, and Toscanini was a great conductor, but was also the first conductor who wanted big sonorities with the orchestra and the orchestra in the same line of the singing, of the singers. With Verdi, the singers was much more important. That is the difference between Verdi and Puccini. I believe that you cannot forget bel canto with Verdi, even in Otello. In Otello, you find a lot of trills, for example. The baritone must sing as a bel canto baritone, not like a gorilla. That is always the problem when you approach Verdi's operas. You must not forget bel canto. Once Renata Scotto, the famous soprano, told me, okay, it's true, but for me, all is bel canto. Even Wagner, even Puccini, of course, even the modern authors. I agree with Renata Scotto. You must sing polite and with a wonderful technique and with the stylistic meaning with your brain before your voice. That is why it's very difficult to sing, and because we have voice, everyone has a voice. Everywhere you can hear wonderful voice on the street without an education, without a lesson. But to be great, there are few great singers.
Last week, I had the wonderful tenor Gregory Kundi.
Yeah.
And Greg, who sings a lot in Italy, a lot in Rome, I know that, began as a bel canto singer. And he did a lot of Rossini and Bellini, Donizetti. And
for me, Gregory Kundi is the record man of the story of opera, because he sang in the same year Otello of Rossini, and some months before Otello of Verdi. Nobody did that. He's unique.
I asked him about that, and he said to me that his hero and mentor was Alfredo Kraus, who was one of my very favorite singers. By the way, same teacher as Renata Scotto. Both of them studied with the same teacher in Milan. And Kraus told Gregory Kundi that you basically don't know your voice until you're in your 50s, and that you should not rush and force it in any way. And Kundi said to me that the first act duet, Già nella notte densa of Otello, of Verdi, is bel canto. And I said to him, I'd never thought of it that way before. And after our conversation, I went and listened to him. And it was very, very interesting. And I agree with you, Enrico, when you say that even Otello is bel canto.
Absolutely. You cannot survive if you sing the first two acts of Otello like a dramatic tenor without brain. So screaming all the time. You must spare all your voice to sing the four acts of Otello, the third and the fourth. The first two acts of Otello are very hard. So you need a bel canto singer, even for Otello, and an actor, of course, an actor first, because you cannot today realize an Otello without acting. So that Gregory Kundi is a big actor too,
yes,
because he's clever. But it's necessary. It's absolutely necessary to sing with that. You must be sure of that. And Alfredo Kraus had the best technique that I ever saw. I remember in China, I had the opportunity to do many master classes together with Alfredo. I was teaching art, scenical art, and some specialities of bel canto. He was the teacher for the main course of singing teaching, and I was with him in Las Palmas, in Torino, in in Siena, in many other occasions. Alfredo Kraus once I put my hand on here in that position, in the middle of here, in the center of your body. He did a high C. I was totally disturbed by these high notes for 2 days. I could not hear well. And here in this position, the stomach of Kraus, these muscles, was like iron. Yeah. Iron. You could put, I don't know, taking a hammer, give him a shot. He was like iron. That is technique, that is years and years studying well singing.
Yeah.
The technical is the base. You cannot sing like a joke.
I thought of a question just now that I've never thought in my whole lifetime of work in opera and loving opera. And you get this question, Enrico, but I think it's an important one, and I would love to know what you think. Mm-hmm. If Bel Canto is Rossini was born in 1792, so let's say the beginning of the 1800s, with Donizetti, born in 1803 or 1797, and Bellini, 1803, these composers wrote music for the early 19th century that we call Bel Canto. However, opera was born in Florence in 1597. And we had Monteverdi and Handel and Mozart, just to name three, but there were many more. Paisiello, all of these composers from before Rossini. What do we call that singing? Is that Bel Canto? Are there many different styles? I think that there's a different style for Monteverdi, for example, than there would be for Handel.
Yes.
How would you describe it, and how would you teach it to a singer singing Monteverdi or Handel?
My answer is absolutely yes, because the first composer, the first operatic composer was Caccini. Caccini was a tenor, was a singer, a very good singer, was the first divo of the singing story. With all the typical also fixations and the madness of the divos. Caccini wrote a lot of music and a lot of ideas about the singing art. And if you see the score of Amarilli Mia Bella, with all the variations, with all the bel canto difficulties, you see there the beginning of the big operas of Bellini or Donizetti or Verdi too. So bel canto begins with the recitar cantando. Mm-hmm. Many.
Let's try to explain recitar cantando. Recitare in Italian means to act, but it also means to recite.
You must not
acting while
do the mistake. The risk is to think that recitar cantando means an actor who sings also. It's not that. Recitar cantando means cantare sulla parola, singing sulla parola, on the word, the sense of the word. I studied with Giuseppe Taddei, who was one of the biggest baritons of the story, and for me, one of the best singers of all the story. Taddei, in his teaching, said always, always, canta sulla parola, sing over the word. That means with a sense of the word. There is a big difference singing amore or saying amore. Is a big difference. If you sing, if you have to sing a phrase, a love phrase, you must be in the words, in the love, in the sentimental words. If you hate somebody, you cannot use the same voice. many singers are, you know, like are very, very obvious. They sing all the same from the beginning, also beautiful voices, wonderful voices. But after 10 minutes, you are, you want to change the channel.
Yeah.
You are, the best singer is not the singer with a wonderful voice, is the singer with a wonderful fraseggio. Phrasing, colors, diminuendo. Magda Olivero, for example, she had a voice not so beautiful voice as color, but she sang so good with such a lot of colors and phrasing that she was like Maria Callas.
What?
You know,
I worked with her and I cooked with her. I'm a better cook than she was, but she was a much better singer than I could ever dream to be. She liked to put pickles in pasta. I'm not kidding. In other words, cetrioli all'aceto. She would chop up pickle and put it in pasta, which was really terrible. But she said it's good for the voice.
It's good for the voice.
Yeah.
Yes, because
energy, carbohydrate from the pasta, and the astringency of the pickles.
Is good for the voice, but it's terrible for, you know, acid reflux, that is one of the most terrible sickness for a singer.
Singers, yeah.
Incredible. Magda Olivero was a phenomenon, was unique, incredible. Nicola Rossi Lemeni, for example, was one of great singer because he was full of these colors. Tito Schipa,
yes.
A little voice, but people was enthusiastic about his interpretation because the phrasing was incredible. We have many examples today of singers, they sing not with this big fraseggio. I think today Jonas Kaufmann is one of them who use the phrasing as the top of his technique. He's very clever.
Yes.
Or John Vickers.
John Vickers. In Rome, they say santo subito. That's when someone has died who we just think, let's not even go through the examination to make them a saint. Let's make them a saint right away. You and I have done Santo Subito with Alfredo Kraus. So now that he's a saint, I'm going to ask you a question about him that even saints are not perfect, but they're great. Do you think he had a lot of colors in his voice? Or he had limitations vocally, but he was the master of using what he had?
Yeah, sure. Alfredo Kraus had not from the nature a wonderful voice, like for example Pavarotti or Gianni Raimondi or Giuseppe Di Stefano or Gigli. Alfredo Kraus was son of the Spanish school of Miguel Fleta, Antonio Cortis, Ippolito Lazzaro, a very shrilling voice with high notes, very easy high notes, and a special color, a technical color. I mean, Jaime Aragal has the voice, is the voice. Jose Carreras, but Alfredo Kraus is the way to use the voice. You cannot have all in your life, but he was very clever. He used the technique as at the best, so that if you hear Alfredo Kraus, after 10 minutes, you forgot the color of the voice and you hear the great, the noble, and the great artist, the great singer. You know, without a technique, you cannot be great. It's not You can have a wonderful voice, but you must study a lot to use your voice. Otherwise, is only a part of your artistry. Is only a part of an artist. The big artist has the technique and the voice,
You and I briefly mentioned Arturo Toscanini. I'd like to move to a different name who is known if you own recordings, but not known as much as he should be, Tullio Serafin. And Tullio Serafin was a bit in the shadow of Toscanini. Their careers overlapped somewhat. He was very important, but he was a bit younger than Toscanini. He played in the orchestra when Toscanini conducted at La Scala. He then became a conductor. But he also, from 1924 to 1934, conducted at the Metropolitan Opera in New York. And the reason for this, in part, was not Toscanini, but Giulio Gatti Casazza, who had been the head of La Scala and then was the head of the Met for a very long time. And when Toscanini was at the New York Philharmonic and then back in Europe, it was Serafin who really continued the Italian tradition in New York, conducted the American premiere of Turandot, and was in many ways the influencer of Italian language opera in New York. One of the people who heard him when she was a girl was Maria Callas. And Callas went on to work a lot with Serafin. Would you talk about Serafin as a conductor, but also his influence on Maria Callas?
Tullio Serafin was the greatest coach of the operatic history. The lessons of Serafin on the piano, together with Maria Callas, is for me the greatest achievement of the entire story of the singing art. Maria Callas could not be Maria Callas without the lessons of Tullio Serafin. Giuseppe Taddei told me about these lessons with Serafin because he was 18 when Tullio Serafin told him, come with me in my house because Beniamino Gigli will rehearse Lohengrin. And for you, that will be the greatest lesson, the greatest singing lesson. And Taddei told me that Serafin at the piano was a magician, not only sustaining the singing, but also explaining each note why, each single word what means and why this character is singing that. So you can imagine what was Serafin together with Maria Callas, the young Maria Callas, doing Valkyria, for example, or then Tristano e Isotta, or Lucia di Lammermoor, and Puritani. Serafin told to Maria Callas, okay, you sang Valkyria of Wagner 2 days before, 2 days ago. You can sing Puritani in 2 days. It's incredible. It's impossible. Puritani of Bellini and Wagner Valkyria are one against the other one. But Serafin understood that in Maria Callas' possibilities, she could sing Puritani as well as Valkyria. Only a real connoisseur of opera can do that. You know, that is something more as a normal conductor. Serafin is God. Herbert for Karajan, for me, the greatest conductor of the story, because I saw him a lot of times live. You know, you cannot judge Karajan from the records only. You must hear live Karajan to understand how was the sound of Karajan. Karajan did all the rehearsals with the recording of Serafin's operas. And the singer said, but why, maestro, you are using the conducting of Serafin and not your own recording? And he said, because Serafin is the truth. Serafin is the opera. Serafin is God. I agree, absolutely. Serafin is the most important operatic conductor of the story. And I hate really when I read or I hear somebody saying, no, Serafin is a tradition conductor, like, you know, rubbish. That is a great mistake, is absurd. Serafin is the number one, is a big example.
As my listeners know, I always ask my guests to provide a list of recordings from my dojo that he or she particularly is inspired by. And you listeners can find them on the site on this page, but I'll just mention them briefly. Serafin conducting from Lucia di Lammermoor, but not Callas, Edgardo, Giuseppe Di Stefano in the last act, Tu che a Dio spiegasti l'ali. Now there's an example. When I didn't speak Italian, spiegare in Italian means two things. It means to explain.
Yes.
And it also means to unfold.
Yeah.
And
like a towel, like a towel.
Exactly. In this aria that says, when you before God spread your wings. But I understood it to mean when you before God explain your wings, which made no sense to me. But it's a gorgeously sung thing. You have Giuseppe Taddei as Falstaff, conducted by Carion. You also have Dinora, an aria sung by Maria Callas in Italian, conducted by Tullio Serafin. Of all the Callas Serafin recordings that you could have picked, Dinora is such an unusual choice. Why did you pick it?
Because I was in the house of Giuseppe Di Stefano in Monza, near Monza, Santa Maria Oe, and I saw a wonderful photo of Maria Callas. And I said to Di Stefano, Maestro, who was Maria Callas really as voice? A dramatic soprano or another type, another kind of soprano? Di Stefano answered to me, she was not a dramatic soprano. Maria Callas was a soprano di coloratura. I was very, astonished. I said, Maestro, but Tristano Isotta, Valkyria, Turandot, Aida, Tosca, Gioconda. How is possible for a soprano di coloratura, a light soprano, to sing this opera? And Di Stefano said to me, look, she was really as voice a light coloratura soprano, but she was so clever, so big as heart, that she could also sing the dramatic soprano of coloratura. She could also sing, but for Di Stefano was a light soprano. I think that Callas, for me, the greatest singer, female singer in the history, revolutionary, really, he was able to combine the depth of the interpreter, the charisma and the excellent musicality with an exceptional bel canto technique. That is the secret of Callas. And I believe that Di Stefano is right. So that I choose Dinora Ombre Légère, where you can find all the technique of Maria Callas to show all the single bel canto secrets in this area. She's playing with her shadow. So she's able to do the voice, the first voice, of Dinora and the voice of the shadow is a miracle. I think is a wonderful example to understand Maria Callas.
Two other choices you have in common the author Goethe. So Beethoven's Egmont incidental music and Mephistopheles, in other words, the story of Faust, in the Arrigo Boito version, conducted by Tullio Serafin, Cesare Siepi, Mario del Monaco, Renata Tebaldi.
Is incredible.
What is it?
You know,
is it Goethe or is it something else?
Mephistopheles is the work that I love so much. Perhaps is a special love, is apart. Boito was an highly educated and intelligent composer, profound connoisseur and scholar of subjects, we say, exoteric. You know? In his most important work, he made clear the dualism between evil and good that eventually meet. Since they are the same thing, Faust betrays the pact at the end of the opera. Faust is a man. The pact he had signed with Mephistopheles together after taking advantage of his services. Mm-hmm. The public senses this. I did Mephistopheles in some directions, and I saw how the public is together with Mephistopheles, not with Faust. Because Boito gives the devil an heroic, almost downright positive character. It is a work that I studied a lot, and I edited an important direction in Pisa and Lucca. I will do it again in Modena and Piacenza in a new installation next in 2022. I believe that Mephistopheles is a hero, and the music of Boito is incredible at the end, in the finale. And Cesare Siepi, what we can say about Cesare Siepi is a monument of vocality and interpretation. And Serafin is incredible. Yeah. Great conductor in Mephistopheles too.
So, and I mentioned in passing that you have Giuseppe Taddei as Falstaff. You were fortunate to know him. I met him when he made his Metropolitan Opera debut, because I was performance manager of the Met then. And he never came to the Met, in part because Rudolph Bing, the general manager from 1950 to 1972, wanted Taddei to audition for the Met. And Taddei just felt, I don't need to audition for the Metropolitan Opera. And unfortunately, he wasn't invited. But James Levine, who was conducting Falstaff, who loves Falstaff as an opera, always admired Taddei and brought him to New York at the age of 69. And he sang wonderfully. And I got to cook with him and spend time with him because Taddei was from Genova.
I am sure that you cooked with him trenette al pesto.
I made them. I made them.
And what he said about your pesto?
Well, he loved my pesto. This is for a whole other topic, but my favorite of my books is called Recipes from Paradise, Life and Food on the Italian Riviera. And it's not just the food of Liguria, but it's the lifestyle, the character of the Ligurians, which is very particular. They are...
Special.
I love them.
Yeah.
But the word in Italian often is schietto, schietti, which means sort of frank, firm, to the point, not the warmest Italians, but if you become a friend of a Ligurian...
Sorry, Fred, about the schiettezza, Schietto Taddei. He met Pavarotti at the Central Park for Elisir d'Amore. Yeah. And when he saw Pavarotti, how are you, Coca-Cola tenor?
Well, Coca-Cola also, because Pavarotti's favorite wine was Lambrusco, which is a sparkling wine from Modena. Lambrusco di Sorbara, which can be very good. But anyway, there are many, many Ligurians who have done incredibly well in opera, Renata Scotto being one, Giuseppe Taddei, Fabio Luisi, Marco Mediato, Fabio Mediato, lots and lots of Ligurians in opera. And Genoa is a great opera city. Verdi loved Genoa. He spent 40 winters there. It was to him the great Italian Republican city as the Repubblica Italiana. My favorite Verdi opera often is Simone Boccanegra, which is set in Genoa. And so Taddei and I got to talk a lot about Ligurian food and Ligurian pleasures. There's a bakery in Genoa called Kleingutti. And do you know it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
and they invented a cake called the Torta Falstaff, because after Falstaff premiered in Milan, Verdi then took it to the Teatro Carlo Felice in Genoa, and they made a cake in his honor called the Torta Falstaff. And he wrote a letter. It's a delicious cake, and he wrote a letter to them. Your Falstaff is even better than mine, Giuseppe Verdi. And they framed the letter, and you can still see it in the above the cash register in the Kleingutti bakery in Genoa. So,
fantastic.
You know, this is why a person can live in Italy for 500 years and just begin to scratch the surface. That's how I feel about you. We've had an hour and 10 minutes or so together. There is so much more that I could ask you. I'm going to ask you a couple of more things, but we should do what in Italian is called puntate, which are episodes of this.
Yes.
We get together again for another topic.
Sure.
But I wanted to ask you, today, July 31st of 2020, is the 100th birthday of a very important Italian actress named Franca Valeri. You and I were talking about her when we just began. And she loves opera. I've met her. She lives in Milan. And she's a little old now, but for many years was very much a presence at La Scala. She is very close to Stefania Bonfedeli, who is a soprano. She's sort of a mentor. Bonfedeli is a protege who sings Lucia. On my Facebook page, I posted that today. Talk about Franca Valeri, number one, as an Italian figure, as someone who beautifully uses the Italian language, but also her relationship to opera.
Yeah, Franca Valeri is one of the most important actresses in Italy. Perhaps the last diva of the Commedia all'Italiana, and she loves opera so much. She, together with the maestro Maurizio Rinaldi, she did for years and years a very important, some very important events in Rieti, with il concorso Mattia Battistini. Mattia Battistini was a very famous baritone who was born in Rieti.
In Umbria.
Rieti is in
Lazio?
Lazio is near Umbria, but is still Lazio.
Okay.
And Franca Valeri helped so many young singers that you cannot imagine how many. The most important singers of the last 20, 30 years was discovered by Franca Valeri. She was very fond, and she was a very good opera director too. Mm-hmm. Obviously, of course, she had not so much money to do these operas like Opera di Roma or La Scala, but with his own capacity, he could do some very important event for discovering Stefania Bonfadelli or Giuseppe Sabatini or Francesco Ellero d'Artegna or Tiziana Fabbricini. Yes. The very first Traviata of Tiziana Fabbricini was not at Scala with Muti, was in Rieti with Maurizio Rinaldi. So many important singers, and she's so human and so clever as I don't know any other so clever woman in the world of opera and of cinema. Is a pleasure to speak with her.
And she's also an author. She has written wonderful books.
Yeah.
That I recommend. I don't think they exist in translation, but if you read Italian, they are wonderful books. Talk about her particular speaking voice and her use of the Italian language.
She used, you can hear in his voice a far or not so far Milan dialect. So Milano is the city where Franca Valeri was born. And you hear this typical Milanese woman. So that is the main character of Franca. But Franca Valeri can use the voice as acting voice, like Laurence Olivier in English fashion. She's perfect. And she's funny, but funny. She has this Northern Italy humor that is particular. It's not like the humor of Romans or Napolitans. The humor of Franca Valeri is like English humor, you know?
Yes.
Is like that. And she used that in his movies together with Alberto Sordi.
But I was going to say, actually, I was going to mention Sordi because he was as Roman could be.
Yeah.
And sometimes there was the contrast between the Milanese Franca Valeri and the Roman Sordi. But then she would sort of move over to Romano and, in effect, be more Roman than he was because she could do that with her voice.
Yes, she can do many voices. She can imitate a lot of different types. She's an observer, like a great actor must be, and also a great director must be.
Yeah.
And like Sordi, she's the Sordi of in a woman way, you know. Sordi and Franca Valeri are like Callas and Di Stefano. They look one the other one and they grow together and they do art together. But I think incredible, these 100 years of Franca Valeri. I wish her 2,000 years more because she's eternal.
I agree. Now, you were talking about she being like Sordi. To me, Totò, who I adore, he in a way is the Italian Charlie Chaplin, except the Chaplin was silent a lot and Totò is very verbal. There's an actress I love who I know you know, but not many people do, named Tina Pica. Tina Pica to me is the female Totò. She was the only one who could match Totò in speech and dialect and humor and timing and so on. Talk about Tina Pica.
Tina Pica is exceptional. Tina Pica, the voice of Tina Pica, she has the voice of a baritone. And she's Napolitan in his soul, in each little corner of his body, and she's the Totò of the woman. Absolutely, la coppia Tina Pica, Totò, or Tina Pica and Vittorio De Sica.
Yes,
you can laugh all the time with these duets. And there is a film, Sotto il segno di Venere.
I know it, Under the Sign of Venus.
Find a duet between Franca Valeri and Tina Pica. They straight one against the other one. No, it's incredible. You can laugh one more.
Well, I mention this in part because, as you know, I love, adore, live for everything Italian. The only thing I disagree
Thank
with
you
about,
very much. We need that now, much
well,
more before. We need people like you.
I know that. People think the Italian government pays me to say good things. They do not. But I would say them anyway because I've been so inspired by Italian culture and civilization in every way. There's just one thing about Italy that I don't accept.
Yeah.
And I want to know your opinion because we're talking about cinema. You were saying that after World War II, many Italians at that time could not read. They were analphabeti. They were illiterate. And so cinema after the war created doppiaggio, dubbing. And we talk about recitazione, acting. Acting comes with the voice. And what we would see in when we'd watch Italian films, but also American, British, French films that were dubbed into Italian by Italian actors, to me, it never worked to see John Wayne, who we know in English as a deep voice, have a rather high little voice, or Bob Hope the same. And Italians would always say to me, but the Italians are the best doppiatori dubbers in the world. And yes, they are, but that's not something to be proud of. To me, recitazione, the voice, as you said, is integral to us.
Yeah.
And I think that by now, frankly, Italians have higher literacy than Americans. More Italians can read than Americans. Put subtitles in Italian films or English films. You speak excellent English, but I think more Italians would learn English, French, Chinese, whatever, by reading titles in Italian and listening. Is there any justification now for having doppiatori and films in Italy?
We had a very big tradition of Italian doppiatori, very big. Some James Bond with the voice of Pino Locchi was perfect. Oreste Lionello, great actor, for the voice of Woody Allen, was perfect. But is now this tradition, we have Fiamma Izzo, she was a singer, she was soprano, very famous at her time with Karajan. She comes from a family of doppiatori, all the sisters, the mother, father, very famous. But this tradition now is not so like before. We have a little, we need to have again this big tradition about what you spoke before, because it's very important. You cannot do, I saw many films in other countries. And for example, in Germany, this art is terrible. It's very you cannot see any film in Germany. I beg pardon to all the German listeners, but it's not true. Is necessary. It's absolutely necessary to have a big doppiaggio school. So I love a lot some English actors. For example, I was astonished when I heard the acting DiCaprio. Leonardo DiCaprio has a wonderful also English voice. Is perfect as acting with his own voice. With Italian doppiaggio, the Italian actor is not so able to do the same acting of the real Leonardo DiCaprio. But you know, it depends. You must have a very big attention about. So it's a great problem because we have a lot of films, thousands of films. So you cannot see a film with a not good way to hear the doppiaggio. It's very important.
I think the only time I would like doppiaggio dubbing is if the actor speaks another language. So that, for example, Ingrid Bergman spoke Swedish English, Italian, and French.
Yeah.
And she could speak in the language that she was acting in. But then when her Rossellini films done in Italian came to America, she dubbed them in English.
Yeah.
That worked because it was her voice. Now,
That,
I
that's
want to ask
clever.
one more question. It's about you. You devote a great deal of your time and energy to directing production of opera. And I've done that. I was trained in that. Now I went in different areas of the opera field, management and things like that. But how did you get involved in directing? And do people who know you as an expert, but often in the media, how do they perceive you? And when I say people, I mean musicians.
Yeah.
How do they perceive you as a director, and how do you work with them as a director?
Yeah. You know, I have never been a lazy person, but always very curious. For example, I've sung on many occasions, but without ever having any career ambition. I did it for my growth and from my personal experience. I dedicated myself with great passion to the opera direction, and here I have had and I am having a lot of satisfaction. I can say in all modesty that I have achieved excellent results in using technology on tradition. Let me explain a little bit more. We spoke again before, but I want to explain a little bit better. I'm not a director who loves stupid provocations, idiocies. Instead, I love to respect the text and often the original setting, but by inserting a strong technological discourse with the use of dynamic projections, lights, even in an unscrupulous way. Today we live in a visual society. People live in front of the screens, either on the mobile phone or TV. I love opera, as I told you, by the light and the projection wrapped in the colors and fantasy suggestions suggested by the most advanced technology. For me, that is a right way to put people of all kind of people, not only people who loves provocations, the Regie Theater, the German Regie Theater, after 40 or 50 years of Regie Theater, thank you, perhaps it's also enough. 50 years of Regie Theater, what we should do more? For me, it's very important to respect opera, but with the most advanced technology possibilities. To use, for example, projections as lights. I think I am one of the first to use that. So projections without a screen, like in your body, in your white clothes or dress, I can do something. You can be water, you can be fire, you can be everything. So without a screen, I think is a good way to work today, because if you see all the films or all the movies are lights and projections, and we are always in front of a screen. That is my way to do the direction today. And
I agree with you. I share your point of view and I admire it. I would only push back one little thing, that if we indulge the screen culture of modern times where people are used to looking at the screen, it means that we're not encouraging listening.
Bravo.
Especially because we read titles. I'm in titles for movies, but not for opera so much.
Bravo.
Because the primary means of communication in opera is the sound, is the singing.
Absolutely.
And the emotional content is not a picture, it's a sound.
Yeah, but Fred, pay attention. I don't make a film opera. I use the film effects, the movie effects. I began my career as assistant of Luigi Comencini, one of the most important directors in movies, for the cinema. So my experience, my very first experience was with the movies effects, the special effects. But I don't forget that I am Enrico Stinchelli, the opera lover. For me, what you say, the singing must be very first and be totally in the first line, so that I work together. For this art to do opera, for those direction, of course, we need very, very great singers, very great actors and singers. If you have somebody who is not in the same line, a little bit less good, then all this big cake comes down like a souffle, you know, the potato souffle.
Yeah.
Like that.
Gonfia, it deflates.
Yeah. Yeah. So I agree with you. Never the screen as the god of the opera. Never. Also, always the screen and the image must be the slave of the opera. We must work like in a team, together in the same line. The difficulty is that so I need, for example, many days of lights. A normal director makes in 3 days, makes lights. I do lights in 15 days.
Yep.
Because you must work, like you said, to respect the singing line. Absolutely. I am one of the few directors who knows to sing. There is no other director that I know they can sing the opera. In the general rehearsals, I can sing the role of all the single parts. I said, go to sleep, so tomorrow you can sing well at the premiere. I will do the general rehearsal. I did Aida like that, singing the bass, the tenor, the soprano, the mezzo. Not always, please.
Well, I think Renata Scotto could do that too.
Yeah.
And she directs. And maybe once upon a time, Graziella Asciutti.
Yes, Rolando Panerai.
Also, and Brigitte Fassbinder. There are a few.
Yeah. Sure. So, but look, Fred, you can ask many directors, please, do you love opera? They say yes. Okay. Do you know opera? They say yes. Okay. But you can read music? Not all, many not. And for me, it's not possible.
They don't speak Italian or German or French.
At all. Yeah. Yes.
Or Russian or Czech or English.
I spoke with a German director. It was like a fight. He told me, the text, the libretto, useless. Why libretto? I change all. Libretto is old. Okay, but we love the old things like the new ones. If you do opera, you must, you have a libretto. You must know the libretto, the words.
Yeah.
At least, I think is necessary.
I interviewed a few years ago a very famous director who told me that in this director's point of view, this director would get rid of overtures to operas because there's nothing to direct there. Huh. And the director said, we don't need overtures in opera, so I don't.
Yeah, they don't need the overture, then they change the final. For example, Calixto Bieto, that is a very good director, is not he's not a stupid man at all. He's very clever, but he changed the final of Traviata. Traviata was in love with Annina, so a lesbo couple, and they fly together away, not dying, not dying, but together to Honolulu, perhaps, and to Germont, Alfred and the father was lying there like two, you know, like two vegetables.
Honolulu Okada. So, as all good things we say in English must come to an end, I do hope we can do this again. As the doctor says in La Traviata, addio, a più tardi.
Yeah, a più tardi with a big pause between.
Enrico Stinchelli, thank you so much. I'm very happy that listeners outside of Italy have come to know the person that I really admire and who millions of Italians admire for your great work and your contribution to opera. So grazie infinite.
Thank you for all, for your help. Sorry for my Italo-English, for many bad words, but I'm very happy to speak with you, with your listeners. So thank you, Fred.
Thank you.
And well done, and see you soon.